Howdy. Welcome.
Hello, welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook,
And I'm Sean Kelly.
and today we are talking about the value of transparency.
Yeah.
And perhaps we should first, well, we can do anything we want, but I was thinking it might be helpful to talk about what we mean by transparency and maybe why we are interested in talking about this topic ourselves.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's two kind of side words that transparency that we noticed last night that when we were talking. You said transparency equals intimacy. And I think I said transparency is vulnerability. And so vulnerability is intimacy. And right. So basically, the more transparent we are, the more open we are, the less boundaries we have. And we've talked a lot about boundaries and stuff, but, I think that part of our pathway in evolution, and this is according to the raw material, from the Law of One, that we move towards fourth density positive vibration, which, essentially, if you can imagine a world where there is no opportunity to be anything but purely transparent.
I love that.
There's no opportunity to even have a secret. So, naturally in this density, we start to move towards that. And this is why, my theory is this is why as we embrace our own truth more and be more honoring of ourselves and stuff, we tend to have real challenge, pretending to feel fine when we don't, and pretending that something doesn't bother us when it does, things like that. Any pretending just kind of doesn't feel good. It feels kind of icky, and so I think what we're talking about today is about embracing transparency, breaking down some of the barriers, and I guess opening ourselves up as much as possible to everything.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I first just want to comment that the idea of living in a context, a density where everything is transparent, where all beings are transparent, excites me so much.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice?
Oh my gosh, I long for that. I just always want to know exactly what another person is thinking, what their truth is. I also want to just live in that energy myself. So to me, that's a dream come true. It feels just so pleasant and relaxing. It's just all out on the table. We're not pretending, we're not feigning anything. And what I also want to say is I believe, to me, the transparency starts with ourselves.
Yes.
Of course, as within, so without. But the greatest peace I believe we can have as human beings on the planet is when we embrace our inner truth, our transparency within ourselves.
Yep.
And it just means basically, I'm just going to honor and be present to my whole internal world. I'm going to be transparent to myself. I'm not going to shy away from, maybe some taboo feelings are coming up. Not to say we have to act on these things, but I'm just going to honor what is coming up for me in any way. And by taboo feelings, I meant more like a jealousy or, quote unquote, negative feelings we might have, or really any taboo feelings. I don't want to say any feelings are wrong. But when we live in this transparency within ourselves, we end the inner conflict. We end the inner war. We end the inner shaming, the hiding from ourselves. And I just don't think there can be any greater peace than that.
Yeah, totally. I think transparency of self occurs sort of gradually. There's a lot of behaviors and patterns we have that we're just totally unconscious of at first. And so part of being transparent with yourself is the honest reflection that you end up doing. You end up noticing your behaviors and patterns, and you have to sort of be transparent with yourself in like accepting that this is how it is right now. This is where I'm at right now. Some of these patterns maybe you want to change, maybe you don't, but knowing what those patterns are, knowing what your instincts tend to be, and that type of stuff is part of becoming transparent to yourself, and part of being sort of authentic with yourself. We lie to ourselves and deceive ourselves just as much as we, perhaps change our behaviors to placate others or sort of people please or whatever it is. We do the same thing internally, and it's usually less obvious to us that we do that. I remember the first time that I realized that I literally just am like BSing myself. I was like sitting in my car, and I can't remember the exact thing, but I just realized, oh my God, I'm lying to myself. Like, this was in 2012, around the time that I had probably the first stage of my awakening, though at the time, no idea what awakening was. And I wouldn't find out for another, 7 years or something. But I basically realized that I'm deceiving myself in these various ways. And then what ends up happening is once you have that initial thing, you start to, at least for me, I started to wonder, where else am I doing this? Right. And that starts to inspire the seeking. Like you'll start to notice it because you're curious about it. So, good morning, Jamie. Good morning, Joe. Joe asked a quick question that I wouldn't mind talking about. I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about today. So he said, all beings being transparent would be similar to hive-minded. Yes, I guess a hive mind could be a way to describe it, though for whatever reason, hive mind feels a little not
quite resonant,
not quite right to me. Not quite, that kind of sounds like almost like robots.
It's almost like what we're in now, I would say.
Yeah,
collective consciousness.
Yeah,
is in a hive mind now.
Yeah, I sort of see a hive mind as more like a structured, a conscious agreement to perform and be certain ways. Mm-hmm. I would say that the hive mind is more closely aligned with what a negatively oriented social memory complex would do. Where basically the elite would distill and give philosophy and hierarchy, and then the hive mind would willingly participate in this hierarchical sort of structure and essentially be a part of a sort of empire where there's layers to the hive mind, and each layer has its own sort of objectives that are given from above, right? What I'm talking about is the other side of that, the other polarity of that, which is they're called in the Law of One, they're called social memory complexes, because they're essentially what happens is the minds of all the unique beings meld into one experience. So the experience of all is directly accessible to everyone that's in the social memory complex. There's still individuality. Like they're still able to discern my experience was this and her experience was that. The only real thing is that you can just directly know the other person's experience, the other entity's experience. You can directly be aware of it. So what ends up happening is the whole society becomes unified in their sort of whatever they want to be doing as a society. So perhaps they want to start exploring the galaxy, or they want to do something else, but the whole group comes in. And what ends up happening is the distortions that exist, things that are disharmonious in the social memory complex, are sort of healed by the entirety of the group. Like, so if I have a bit of a distortion, everyone around me is aware of it, and I can sort of access all of the experience of everyone else to heal that without having to do what we would normally do in this density, which is like go through blocks and resistance and challenge and trigger and trauma and stuff. Instead, we literally access almost like a library, like, oh, Tassel actually went through this and resolved it and felt all of these feelings, and you can literally directly experience their experience as if it was yours. So you don't have to actually do these things. So what ends up happening is you end up being very healed and just unified in your, you could think of it like kind of like a democracy, but where it becomes self-evident to the entire organism that this is the way to go. And so there is no like, hive mind sort of makes me feel like particular purposes are sort of given to the hive mind, and then the hive mind goes, and it almost feels like that. Now, maybe I'm just seeing that in a distorted way, but I like to use the term social memory complex. And then that can be a negatively oriented one, which is hierarchical and structured, or a free-flowing, dynamic, expanding, loving one that's embracing unity. And so that's like the next step of evolution for all entities. That, so, you know, basically a planetary entity moves into the density that our Earth is now in, which brings the vibrations for this transparency that I talked about. And then the third density beings start to learn those lessons and move towards that. And then the Akashic records basically becomes sort of the living mind of that entire group, while each person still has their experience. So I hope that clears that up a little bit. I know it's a complicated entire species in sync. Yeah. So, okay. So hive mind, Joe just said, hive mind to me means an entire species in sync, able to experience what everyone else does and learn what everyone else does. Yeah. So if that's how you see hive mind, I think I've seen hive mind maybe in sci-fi stories and stuff that's made me think of it differently. But yeah, so that's basically what it means then. Everyone's in sync, everyone's in agreement, everyone's unified, and, you know, any conflict that comes up gets resolved fairly quickly because it becomes pretty clear what the correct or aligned path is for the whole society.
So in part, we wanted to talk about transparency because as we are moving from third density to fourth density, the transparency is going to be what's going on.
Yeah,
so
it's required
for all. So for all of us, as we ascend into this next density, the invitation is, okay, let's see how transparent we can be with ourselves and with others. And would it be helpful to maybe talk about our experience together yesterday and sort of what little nuggets we gleaned about transparency from that experience together?
Which one? Oh, about the we just have so many conflicts that no, I'm kidding. But we were talking about where we had all the work that we wanted to do, and then
snow day.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think that's a good example of transparency. And then also we wanted to talk about how by being transparent we allow opportunity for others to choose how to engage. Yeah. Okay. So I guess do you want me to start, or do you want to?
Yeah. Do you want to start your side of the experience?
Sure. So we had a course that we were offering. Thank you again to Joe for coming, and you know, I'm sure Jamie said she's gonna check it out on the recording. So I appreciate you guys. But we had this course that we were working on, and what we tend to do with our courses is we tend to kind of make them last minute, right? We don't necessarily mean to do it that way, I don't think, but we both, I think, do better when there's a time commitment and a pressure that starts to get applied. Like, so we tend to sort of procrastinate a bit, even though we know, weeks in advance. We tend to just wait until, the pressure feels, and we start to, and I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but that's what we're doing. And, I made this, out of our process. I kind of wrote it all out and turned it into this outline and made it into this process chart. And, I basically had it in a rough draft and wanted to kind of go over it with Tassel. There was a bunch of stuff that we wanted to talk about before the course went live. So, the night before, Wednesday night, we said, we'll try to get on early. Tassel was going to be, her kids were going to be going over to her ex-husband's to stay. And it seemed like there'd be a decent amount of space for us to do all that work. Probably, maybe like 8 hours or so of time that we could probably allocate to doing this work. And I thought that this diagram thing was going to take a while and stuff like that. All of this is to say that plan just fell apart. Like the next morning, as I woke up, she basically said, "Oh, the kids want to go tobogganing or sledding, and I have to take them early to my ex's, and so you can sleep in." And I was like, "Great, okay, I'll sleep in." And then I slept in, and then basically I didn't know what was going on, and I got kind of upset that we had this course that we're working on, and to me it just felt really important and felt like I truly believe that course and that method that we taught is sort of revolutionary, and that in fact bringing this out to the world is sort of doing a really big service to humanity. Actually, I try to remain humble in that, but I do see it like that. And so I was really excited to do it, and it's not often I get this pumped up about any work I'm doing, so to me it was a really big deal. And then Tassel sort of was like, "Well, I'm going sledding," and I was like, "Yeah, I get it," because Tassel's kids are a little bit older too, so there's a whole bunch of context here that makes it make more sense. Her kids are a little bit older. She doesn't get to do these types of things with them. They don't, they're teenagers. They don't tend to want to do this type of stuff with mom as much. To get them both to do stuff together is probably kind of challenging too. There's a whole bunch of aspects to that. And then it's just important to Tassel, obviously, to spend time with her kids. So, I understood that, but I was also like, and also another thing, it doesn't snow in Nashville. So this is the most snow they've had in years and years and years. I think probably at least almost a decade or something. And so it was interesting how all of this happened on this particular day when we have this big thing that we're trying to do. It's yes. So odd.
So interesting. Yeah.
But so I felt just I didn't feel very considered. I felt like, throughout the day, she didn't, I'm sure she wasn't totally sure about the timing of things. And so, but she didn't mention like what time maybe she'd be back or guess or any of that. So I was kind of like, when am I even supposed to be available for her? Like, could I go, if I wanted to go to the store, I want to make sure that I have the maximum amount of time to work with her as well. So when she's ready, I want to make sure I'm ready. And you'd think, well, maybe you should have just asked her what time. And that's kind of where we're getting, is that I was sort of in all of this discomfort and wounding, and like, I guess some sort of pains around this whole situation. And I think part of me didn't want to admit that my peace had been disturbed. Part of me didn't want to bother her with this type of stuff because I knew she was with her kids and all that too. I didn't want to, I could intuitively feel that she was feeling a lot of pressure from the kids, from her ex-husband, and then also from her own desire to hang out with her kids to do it this way. And I didn't want to put all that, any more pressure on her. And so there was all these different reasons that I wasn't fully transparent. Like I wasn't fully like, this is difficult for me. You're doing kind of the opposite of what we said, and it's very unclear to me when we can work. And I feel like we have a whole bunch of work to do. I ended up sort of overestimating how long our work actually took. I think it only took us like an hour and a half or something to do the rest of the work that we had to do. So I totally overestimated. I thought it was going to take us like 4 or 5 hours. And it just didn't. But so there was all of this stuff happening, and I didn't say anything. I didn't bring it up. I didn't, I was trying to be courteous. I wasn't trying to be problematic in any way. But what I think we noticed is that by me not bringing it up at all, by me not saying anything, Tassel's not aware that there's anything going on. But also, and I think kind of more importantly, she doesn't get the opportunity to make an informed decision around what she's doing and around what feels highest and best to her, and what feels most aligned, what feels highest and best to everyone. She doesn't. I didn't give her the opportunity to choose me in that situation, or to choose our work, or to, and after all of it, she said maybe it would have been more appropriate for me to not go, or go spend less time, or something like that. And and I think whatever happened perfectly. I think I noticed about myself, I'm just a little uncomfortable saying, hey, I want you now. If I know her attention's elsewhere, I'm a little uncomfortable doing that. So there's a few different layers, but the transparency in it, I think what we sort of arrived at is that it's only helpful. All of it, like if I were to just be more vocal about it, it could have been a lot better, traversed it a lot better.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's just beautiful to share your experience with all of that.
Trying to be transparent.
Yes, you just were so transparent. You were so transparent last night. And actually last night, when you brought all of this up and what your experience was around my behavior yesterday, I was just jumping for joy. I was so happy that you were sharing your uncomfortable experience with me, because it felt so transparent and so intimate. And to me, it's only helpful to know what your experience was and what's important to you, and how I can serve you and our relationship in the highest and best way. So I also wanted to make this point that intimacy, to me, doesn't mean necessarily it's something positive, quote unquote, positive, that we're sharing with each other. Intimacy to me just means we're sharing anything. It can be something that might feel kind of very, I don't want to call it negative, because you're just sharing, oh, this was an uncomfortable experience for me. But I want to know about it. I want to know, because I don't want to help co-create anything that's uncomfortable for you. So when you opened up last night and were so transparent, and I would say vulnerable and intimate, I was just thrilled. It was one of the best moments of our relationship for me. So, yeah, that was amazing. And then something else we talked about around all of this is just speaking the whole truth. And the whole truth may seem really messy. Like, from what I heard from you, there was a part of you that could tell. My kids had a snow day basically yesterday. And so it was all very last minute. And just to me, it felt important to spend some time sledding with them. It just did. And so you could feel that. And so part of your truth was, oh, I can feel her desire to do that, and I want to support her in that. I want her to have that.
Yeah, I could feel that my desires were sort of conflicting with what I could kind of tell was your orientation. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also had other feelings come up of our work tonight. This Namaste method that we're debuting in this course is really important to you. And I think you also knew it was really important to me too. So your whole truth was complicated and almost diametrically opposed, as was mine. Mm-hmm. My whole truth yesterday was so conflicting. and confusing. And it ended up being a very stressful day for me because it was one of those perfect storm moments as a mom, business person, where what you want to do as a mom is in direct conflict with what you want to do for your business. It was just one of those moments, one of those days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the whole truth. And your whole truth was very similar. And I always say, this comes through my guidance, I always say, the truth always serves all in the long term. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable in the short term, but it always serves all. When we get the truth out on the table with each other, it always ends up serving all. And the experience we had yesterday just illuminated so much for me. I mean, it was huge for me that you shared what you did, because even I didn't even realize that these things bothered you, because we've talked about this a lot. You tend to do so much inner work just so on your own and move through things on your own and not really share with me so much, maybe in the way that I tend to do, what you've been moving through. So I didn't even really know that this would bother you in a way, or that you cared about things in this manner. And it was honestly very comforting to me to know that you do. It made me feel actually much more secure in our relationship, that, oh, he does care about our business and me and spending this time. And it also helped to normalize in a way my feelings, because I have these same feelings with you around your kids or other things all the time. The same messy feelings, like, oh, I want you to be able to have whatever you want and spend time with your kids. And then also I want to spend time with you and I want us to do our work on our business. I have that all the time with you. And I think I'm pretty transparent about it, which has felt very vulnerable and sometimes embarrassing, and sometimes like, oh, I don't even want to feel this way, but I do.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of getting everything out on the table with your peoples.
Yeah. I'm starting to learn more and more. I think part of the issue for me is that there were multiple times throughout my growing up that I was told stuff like, yeah, one of the sentences that I recalled the most is, "You don't have a perspective." So like somebody was upset with me and I was like, "Can I just share my perspective?" And they said, "You don't have a perspective." And I was like, "Oh." And I took that really hard.
Wow. That's very intense.
It kind of,
yeah.
It kind of like crushed me in a way, right? Because I'm like, oh, I don't matter like at all. I don't even have my own experience.
Yes.
What is this, right? So, and I kind of believed them in a way, like, it's silly to think now back to that, but at the time I wasn't grounded in some of my my confidence that I have now. I was like, all these thoughts of me not mattering are real. Like, the thoughts of insecurity that I've had my whole life, this person's explaining to me that I really don't matter. Like, what I think and feel doesn't matter. And so it was very direct. I wasn't presuming it. They said specifically, you don't have a perspective. Like, I don't see your perspective at all. I don't care about what you think at all.
Yes.
And so that happened a couple different times. And I learned fairly early on that, my stuff is not really welcomed to be brought up. It doesn't tend to help. It tends to just make things worse. And all those types of things. And so what I'm learning, though, is that in a safer space, in a more trusting and accepting communication, whether it's with partner or just a friend, whatever, I'm learning that I, my experience and what I think does matter to people. People care about what I feel. And so I'm learning that, like, it's always helpful for me to share it, that that type of thing is useful. And I didn't see the value. And so I don't even sometimes think to do it. That type of thing.
It's so interesting to me what you're sharing, because I had absolutely the parallel experience with you, where it felt to me within my family system growing up and later on also that I did not matter. My separate beingness did not matter. I was only really like an appendage to others and what they wanted to sort of do with me, almost like a puppet. And in my dissertation, I write a lot about this journey of mattering. And I have like 10 sort of mantras that I wrote about self-sovereignty. And the first one is literally, I matter.
Yeah.
And that just was so powerful to me, to embrace that truth, to come back to that after being so far from that for most of my life, that I didn't matter. So yeah, I think it's just really healing and expanding for us to just start with ourselves, that I matter. My whole truth matters. Everything I'm feeling matters. All of it. I start with that. And then to be in a relationship where it feels like for me, it feels that I matter to you. And I hope that it feels that you matter to me. And
totally.
And I want to just say, like, really clearly right here publicly, that everything that is going on for you matters to me. Every single thing matters.
Thank you. I feel the same. And I think when we start to step into transparency, sometimes we can be a little too transparent at first. Like, so we have to kind of recognize that the relationship kind of has to grow together. Sometimes you might be giving people a little more than they can chew, right? Like, you might be expressing things that make them really uncomfortable. Like, it's not that they don't care about what you experience. They care a lot, but they, you're saying things that they're just kind of like, oh, that feels really bad. So part of, I think, the balance is to learn sort of where your partner's at, where you're at as far as what you'd like to share, and having these types of discussions as well around, if they're saying stuff and being very transparent and it's very hard for you. Like, for example, if your partner is sharing that they've had these sexual fantasies with about other people, for example, they're, just expressing that they had these sexual fantasies, that could be very upsetting for you, right? Yeah. It could be very challenging for you to like be like, oh, and you may do it too on occasion, right? But really, maybe you're not totally ready to talk about that stuff, right? So what I think we're advocating for is moving towards like an acceptance and a being able to talk about these things. If one person wants to share these things, we want to try to have an orientation of acceptance and, non-judgment, and that type of thing. And that can be a little bit challenging, but that's sort of the point of it all, I think, is where we will each test each other's boundaries by being our transparent selves. So I'll make perhaps jokes that are, I think, humorous. Sometimes my jokes can be a little bit pointed, like if people can mistake it for an insult, because sometimes it has a layer of a sort of poking fun at someone, things like that. And I'm totally just kidding. But often what happens is I end up poking at a part that the person is already sensitive in. And so they're like, ow, ow, ouch, right? But my transparent self is this humor, is this like it's authentic. I'm not trying to, my intention is never to hurt anyone. But just in the same way as somebody sharing their sexual fantasies or something, I'm sharing something about myself, my own humor, and I'm trying to be funny. And if whenever anybody shares something, the other person shuts them down, it's going to feel like rejection. It's going to feel like I don't matter. It's going to feel like all that stuff. So, when we're having challenges around our partner being too transparent in certain areas, how we approach that, I think, is really important, and not to approach it saying, you're wrong for feeling this, you're wrong for saying this, you're wrong. I want to try to approach it like, this was hard for me.
Yes.
And maybe some adjustment can happen in how it's brought up, how it's talked about, that type of thing. And like,
I think what you're saying is so interesting and helpful, that the more shadow side of transparency is, sometimes the transparency from another person is going to be really hard for me and painful and triggering. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And as you were saying, I think the best way to handle it is just to be transparent. Just be transparent back. Like, oh, okay, I hear that. And then this is what arises in me. Maybe I feel uncomfortable in some way. And then at the same time, I'm in this orientation of transparency. So I don't want to shut you down, and we're talking about things that are not abusive or traumatic, obviously. So I think just transparency is just always the way to handle it all. Like, I'm just going to be transparent that, that's hard for me when you say that, when you do that. And at the same time, I honor and I want you to be able to be transparent in your beingness. And then maybe there is some harmonization that.
Yeah.
Just, and that's what we've talked about a lot, that when we're transparent and truthful about difficult things, the highest and best orientation seems to just bubble up just magically. It's no one has to say, could you stop doing this? Or could you do this? It just naturally bubbles up sort of the right path of harmony. And it is it magically seems the right path for each of our expansion as well. It's all together. And I'm just curious, I don't know if you want to share, like, when you first started to say, sometimes things will come up when your partner's being transparent that are hard. I'm just wondering, are there certain things that I've shared transparently that have been hard?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. You're the most transparent person I've ever met. You say stuff constantly that triggers me. Yeah. Or you did, as I heal them and accept them, and, you've triggered me probably more than anyone I've ever met. I'm just being honest.
Just being
transparent.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Are there some themes? I'm just curious. Like, I'll share too.
Sure, I'll share a theme. Something that is challenging for me is sometimes you'll highlight your ex-husband's positive traits to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When you're identifying a challenge you're having with me, you'll go, yes, my ex-husband used to do this, and this would help me feel safe, and all these things. And I'm like, good for him. That type of stuff. That's happened lots, or nothing crazy. And I don't think you're doing anything wrong. You're trying to make a point. And I'm sensitive to that because it's your ex-husband. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not as good as your ex-husband. That's kind of how it feels, right?
Yeah. And I think highest and best is not to mention him at all. I think highest and best would be like, I think it's okay. Yeah, I think that's not highest and best. I'm sorry.
No,
I've done that.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's only that I'm insecure that I feel anything about that at all, right? And I don't really have that experience anymore. So because you were doing that, and I learned to accept it as
Yeah.
she's just giving an example. I stripped the stories out of it and stuff. I've now sort of healed that part.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done me a service by doing that. Like that's part of the point of what we're saying, I think, with transparency, is that
Yeah.
even if sometimes the truth is that you had an ex-husband who did these things and that helped you in these various ways. That's the truth. Right. And so hiding from that is not necessarily helpful, I think. Pointing at my own insecurities, showing me that when she talks positively about her husband, when it's in comparison to my maybe negative traits or negative experiences she's had with me, that doesn't feel comfortable at all, right? It feels like, oh, well, maybe, and then I want to say stuff like, well, maybe you should just go be with him. I mean, if he's so great, I don't know, right? And it can get very extreme really quick, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's tons of stuff like that I don't even know if I've ever said anything. But that's because I'm very aware that, like, when I'm having those types of things, it's like my thing. And I specifically don't want, I've said this a lot, but I don't want, because your instinct was, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe it's not highest and best for me to say that. I know that that's your instinct. So your instinct is to mitigate my pain, because you don't want to be inflicting pain, right? My instinct is to allow you to give me pain because I know it serves me. So I specifically don't ever want you to adjust so much. Like, I want you to say whatever you want, do whatever you want. And if it hurts me, okay, that's what happens.
I understand what you're saying.
That's just my orientation, and that's sort of how I see it.
I think my discernment in this is that I think at least a few times I can remember when I was hurt mentioning my ex-husband and what he did. And I don't think that was highest and best.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I think it's more highest and best if I'm hurt. I can say, oh, this way of being is a little easier for me. I don't think I need to bring him into it in that moment.
Yeah, it was kind of like piling it on a bit for me, right?
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
You're sort of already telling me that I'm not doing something great, and then
I don't think that was highest and best. But in a calmer moment, when there's not a thing between us, if I shared, oh, he tended to be this way, I think that's okay, because that is just the truth.
Right.
But being discerning and mindful about when you bring these things in that could be uncomfortable. So what I'm saying is, of course, I don't want to do anything that makes you uncomfortable, but I know I must be truthful. And sometimes the truth might be uncomfortable, and that's catalyst for you and helpful, and you do the same for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being mindful about when and what we are sharing.
Yeah. My orientation on it is kind of like, if you didn't say these things, then I'd still have these insecurities. I wouldn't be able to move through them. So
exactly.
I definitely don't want you not to say it. And I think that's part of the reason that I don't bring it up, is because I don't really have any interest in you tiptoeing at all or doing any of that. I really don't want to influence your expression at all. And your expression is always your choice, but I know that your choice will usually be to avoid giving me pain if possible. And so I guess my point is just I don't want to have you go, I want to say this, and then, oh, I'm not going to say that because I know that might be hard for him, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe you wouldn't do that, but that's, I think my
this
orientation
has been an expansion for me in this lifetime of moving from that orientation you just described, where I was very other oriented and people pleasing and not wanting, I wouldn't say the truth if I thought it would hurt someone. And I think I have moved into a different space of that where at this point, I can't not tell the truth. I'm married to the truth. Truth is, in a way, my first beloved. Because I can't live with myself when I'm not truthful. It's so uncomfortable.
Right.
Feels so misaligned. So that can be a little bit challenging. And I think you're the same way. So I have to speak the truth with you. And I'm learning how to be more finessing with that. Timing wise, and just what I was saying about the ex-husband comments. So yeah, I now do live in a space where I just have to be truthful, but I want to be as compassionately truthful as possible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm always advocating for that. But I think, we need to remember that sometimes we're learning how to actually be more balanced and compassionate with how we express, right?
Yes.
A lot of these things that we're talking about are very challenging, polarizing, difficult things.
Yes.
And we're trying to bring them out.
Yes.
And
timing is really helpful to consider. And am I balanced and centered right now as I'm speaking possibly this uncomfortable truth? And yeah.
And or am I saying, like with the Kelly thing, am I saying sort of that I want you to be more like my ex, right? Am I kind of saying that? Because that's
right. Running through like, what's my energy? Why am I the why? We love this question. Why? Like, why am I sharing this right now?
And luckily for me, I'm very strong in myself. Earlier Sean probably would have just molded to whatever Tassel expressed as, I prefer this, and I would have been like, yes ma'am, I'll do that. I'll be whatever you want. Earlier Sean would have done that. Sean now is like, I hear something like that and I'm like, good for that guy. I don't care at all about this. Like, this is to me irrelevant. As far as what he did well, what he did poorly, this is, to me, it's sort of, it's useful to understand that this behavior was safe. So that's what I get out of it, right? Is like, and the rest of it, I just go, that's the other thing too. I should just share this, that, he's a surgeon. He's got a beautiful house. He's very articulate and sort of charming in a, and like, it'd be pretty easy for me to be quite jealous of this man. He
drives a Maserati.
He has a Maserati and a Jeep, and he lives in like a mountain of wilderness, and lives on a beautiful, like, it's like he lives in a little nook up in the mountains. It's crazy. So, I could really easily be very envious of him in so many ways, and that's part of what was getting highlighted to me. And so it's all good. I'm just saying basically that I'm lucky that my orientation is more to be like, yeah, some people are great at stuff, some people are crappy at stuff. It really doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm how I am, and I accept it. And if you can't, then, that's not so much my problem. And I can certainly adjust and expand and all that stuff. But, I think I'm just grateful that I took that sort of orientation, but also was like aware enough that I was like, she's correct. Like, there are these areas that I can expand in. So, she's not just trying to change me. She's just suggesting different ways for us to be more in harmony. So, and I it's not like I was angry about this stuff for, whatever. I was triggered for probably, I don't know, a minute or 5 minutes or something. And, it's not, I moved through this stuff pretty rapidly. Once I figured out the internal process to all of this, I just skip on through it usually.
So what a beautiful orientation you just described. So just when I mentioned something about my ex-spouse doing this or that you were able to stand in your own beingness. Well, I am who I am. That's great for him. And then also simultaneously being a bit open to what I was expressing, I guess, or what I was sort of holding an invitation towards. So that's
Yeah.
just really beautiful. I don't think that's just like a perfect way to handle that.
Yeah, I think that's the only way we can ever do it. Like we have to hear what they're saying, and just run it through ourselves and be like, does this, like, is there some truth to this? Is there like opportunity for me to do better? Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's, maybe you're just like, no, sorry, no. And that's okay, right? Like, you don't, just because they are uncomfortable does not mean you have to do anything. It's our people pleasing that makes us feel like we have to change. And we don't have to change, but
this loyalty, sovereignty to ourself, starting with that. Does this, what they're sharing, is it resonant or not?
Yeah.
I love it. A couple more points I wanted to make around this being transparent, excuse me, is I have more recently been a lot more transparent with my children.
Yeah.
And this has been a really interesting expansion for me. I definitely come out of a way of being with my kids of thinking I just need to be this complete sort of rock for them and do everything for them and not show any weakness or vulnerability in my own life, like so that they don't feel insecure or something. I just need to be like perfect, basically. I need to be perfect for them so that they feel really safe and they get everything they need and everything they want. I just need to be super mom to them. That is my programming. I think that's really common for moms and probably dads too. And wow, that's an exhausting identity to try to keep up. Oh my goodness. And what I found myself being really uncomfortable was the pretending, like something was going on for me personally or in my business. And I would feel this egoic pressure. I need to pretend for my kids that everything's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. That was so uncomfortable for me to pretend. I can't pretend anymore. It just isn't, it's not in alignment. So I've been a lot more transparent with, and now my kids are teenagers, and I do think there are sort of age appropriate ways to be transparent.
Yeah, totally.
And, my kids are 13, 14, and 17. My stepdaughter is 17. So what I do now is I'm a lot more honest about what is going on for me. It's a huge relief for me to not pretend. And I think it's so helpful in the same way I was saying it was so helpful to learn about you. First of all, I think it's really helpful to be transparent, more transparent with our kids, because it helps them understand life and how their parents move through things, and to sort of model for them how they can move through things. If we pretend everything is fine all the time, then they are going to think, oh, I need to be fine all the time too. My mom is fine all the time. Nothing bothers her.
Yep.
So then we put that pressure on our kids. Then they think I need to be like that.
Yep.
So
we're modeling, we model for them, and whether we're like
letting them know, like, oh, at times I'm sad, at times I'm scared, at times I'm frustrated, at times I'm angry, at times I'm happy, at times I'm a human being. I'm not just a mom. I'm a human. And it gives them permission to feel their full range of experiences. And then also, things aren't surprises to them. So for instance, I've shared with them that at times I'm really lonely. It's really hard for me often when they're gone for a long time and I'm just home alone in the house or over Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And I share that in part because I want them to understand that I would really like you, Sean, my life partner, for us to live together. And that's, a goal of ours. So I don't want that to be a surprise to them. So if I didn't share any of that, and then all of a sudden I said, oh, by the way, Sean and I are living together. We're all going to be under one roof, guys. And then they might be like, what? What's going on with that? But
Right.
if they have the context of my internal desires and experiences, then they can understand it more. And then we become, they understand us more too. And that is really helpful in any relationship, including our parent-children relationships.
Yeah. That's a really good important point, I think, and especially the part for me where around how we can kind of feel like we are meant to be perfect for our kids.
Yes.
And this is actually what informs a lot of the programming of the child to think that they aren't supposed to be certain ways, right?
Yes.
We try to model a perfect and balanced, stable person. And then the child goes, oh, I have to be perfect and balanced and stable like my mom or like my dad or whatever. Trying to be conscious, I think, of, especially in parenting, just what we're modeling for our kids are.
Yes.
And especially if we're pretending and stuff, we're basically advocating for falsity, right?
We're advocating for them to pretend too.
Yeah. We're not usually thinking about it like that. We're usually just trying to be courteous. We're trying to be good parents. We're trying not to put our kids into states of negativity, right? We're trying to be good. And that's what I always try to remind people. A lot of their traumas from their parents, are kind of projected. Like, for example, my father is much more stoic and analytical. He isn't as expressive with emotion, generally. He's gotten a lot more expansive with that over the last several years, which is great. But when I grew up, I felt like he was pressuring me to be more like him. He wasn't. He never told me not to be emotional or not to be sad. He never said anything like that, I don't think. But he modeled a stable, stoic, logical approach to life. And I thought, my dad's amazing. I want to be like that. Therefore, I put the pressure on myself. And so I try to remind a lot of people, a lot of times our parents, we feel like they pressured us, but pressure comes from us. Other people may claim or may ask us to do certain things, but we accept it. We accept the pressure and we create the pressure. To sort of imply that they pressured us means that we're not sovereign. And so even as children, we're sovereign. We just don't know what's going on. And so we accept the suggestions and projections of others as truth, and we accept it onto ourselves. And this is one of the ways we can look at, our past traumas and realize, oh, the parent, whatever they were doing, they were trying their best. Maybe their best was crap, but they were doing their best. And my dad and my parents did great with me. I think it was totally the opposite, that I was like probably a real trouble for them. I know that I was. So but that doesn't mean that as great as they were and as hard as they tried, as supportive as they tried to be, I still had lots of issues with them and different traumas or different pressures that I put on myself and pains around all of that.
And I think it's helpful to remember that just as, say, in these conscious, intimate partnerships like you and I are in, that we are providing catalysts for each other as parents with our children, we are also doing the same with them. We're also providing catalysts for them, and they are providing catalysts for us. And it's so easy to beat ourselves up. You and I both are divorced, and I'll just speak for myself, but I think maybe you have some of these same feelings. Just be a lot of guilt around divorce and feeling we've let down our kids and wanting to compensate in ways that probably aren't always highest and best. But to come back to, on the other side, we all signed up for these experiences together. Everything our kids are going through is serving ultimately their expansions, and the pain and things that they're moving through is serving them ultimately.
Yeah.
And just one other little point I want to make is part of the reason I really landed on this transparency more with my kids is I was noticing over the years the times when I lost it with them, when I had some, I don't know, a handful of times when I blew up at them. They were always when I was super stressed. And a lot of them were around divorce, custody, really stressful situations. And I realized the anger that was coming out in those moments, underneath that was sadness and pain and grief that I was having a hard time being in. And I was like, you know what? I don't ever want to show them that anger. I don't ever want to go there again. I'm just going to show them the sadness instead. Yeah. And I think that's a better experience for them. I can't pretend I'm going through something. I'm not totally perfect right now. And I'd rather show them the vulnerability and the sadness that I'm experiencing than the anger. So these days, I'm a little more apt to cry a little bit in front of them rather than angry. I'm really never like angry yelling at them ever, but I might sometimes cry in front of them a bit.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I've been actually trying to be a little bit more expressive with my kids. I make sure I tell them I love them all the time. And I'm very, try to be very caring. And then also if I get snippy at all, if I do anything like that, I usually go right back to them almost immediately. And I say, I'm really sorry that I got frustrated and snipped at you and irritated. Here's what was going on for me. And I took it out on you, and it's not fair. And I know that. And I'm just struggling because all of this is happening, and then you're freaking out about something, and I kind of I hit my boiling point, right? And then I and I'm talking about, for me, I'm like, the worst thing I usually do is like, oh, forget it then, and I'll just walk away, and like that's about as bad as I could possibly get, pretty much at this stage. So, but even that, then I go back and I say, here's what was going on, and I let them know that like I'm an adult human that has a lot of stuff happening, and I have feelings just like they do. I have challenges just like they do, and sometimes I also have little tantrums just like they do. You know how, and I'll phrase it like that. I'll say, how you're playing a video game and, you die in it and you get mad and you get upset. Like, that's basically what's happening. I'm getting upset because my things are not working properly for me, the same way you do when I say we can't go to McDonald's or whatever it is. Like, that's what I'm going through. And then, I'm also trying to take care of you. And so if you can understand a little bit my side, it's harder for kids to grasp it a little bit, but I think that starting with this foundation of transparency in appropriate ways, and you'll know what's appropriate for you, your kids, and depending on their age and all that, you'll get an idea of what's appropriate and stuff like that. But I have seen a lot of value in this, and helping them, because otherwise they are going to walk away from that experience and they're going to go, something's wrong with me. I've upset my parents or my parent, and they're gonna, maybe I shouldn't do that again. Maybe I shouldn't voice my emotion. Maybe I shouldn't, whatever it was, right? Because a lot of times they're just voicing their emotion.
Yep.
And it's unsettling us, and we have all this other stuff going on, and then we react, right? So, yeah,
it's a practice as a parent of honoring our human in our parenting relationship with our kids, which I think our society really hasn't really taught us how to do. So we are human spirit beings, and just to honor who we are with our kids as well. And I apologize all the time to my kids, and I apologize all the time to you. And it's funny too. I think there's some stigma around apologizing too. Like, I don't know, like sometimes I think I used to think, I don't know, I had some resistance around apologizing or something, but like now I just do it so freely. And
I think admitting where you see that you may have gone a little awry is
like
vulnerable,
sometimes
and transparent.
That inner truth of like, oh, I wish I had done that better. I'm not really happy with what I did there. It's painful. I think that's part of the resistance of apologizing is it's just
admitting to it.
Admitting to your, and it really is just admitting to yourself first. Oh, that wasn't so great.
And then having to let others know that you realize that you've made a mistake and stuff. Like it's not the easiest thing to do.
Do you remember we were all in the car together recently, and I did something really stupid. I was trying to pull into the gas station.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Impatient.
Yeah, I remember.
And I kind of went in the other lane to try to pull in quicker.
Yeah.
And I
into like oncoming traffic a bit, right? And
I mean, no, there wasn't any at that moment.
Yeah,
but it was not a brilliant.
It was
idea.
A little bit of a dangerous move, I would say.
Yeah, it was a dangerous move.
Yeah.
And right after I did it, I thought to myself, "Oh my God, that was really dumb." And I knew I had to say something because I didn't want my children to model that at all. So I knew I had to, and I ended up immediately saying, what I just did was really stupid. I am so sorry. I was being really impatient. I will not do that again. And I hope you don't do that when you drive. And the whole thing was uncomfortable because I had to look at myself and admit I just did something really dumb.
Yeah, and
in front of my kids, no less.
And and it's interesting too because I was moments away from asking you how you felt about what just happened, and like I was moments away from asking because what I noticed about it was it was about, I noticed that I think we were rushing somewhere. We were trying to get somewhere really quickly.
He was late for something.
Yeah, that's what it was. Someone was late, something like that. And you didn't want to wait for like the light or whatever, so you were trying to like go a different way to like get around it. Mm-hmm. And it ended up actually there was a truck stuck, and so it ended up taking probably longer.
Yeah, it was immediate feedback from the universe. I didn't even need that. I knew it was wrong.
Right.
Not aligned. But yeah, I immediately got feedback that was not the right thing to do. But yeah, it was all like, it was uncomfortable just to look at myself and be like, yeah, that was dumb.
And I wasn't going to suggest you did anything wrong. I was just going to say, did you notice what I noticed about that? Or did you notice that you got really impatient and then kind of was like, oh, I know what to do. I'll just go this way that I'm probably not supposed to do it this way. Yeah. It's a little dangerous, but I'm, and
so I was able to be transparent with myself, and it was uncomfortable.
And then you said to the kids, don't do that, right? Like that's not how you drive, right?
And so that's just the practice. Like we're going to be transparent, and we're going to notice things that we don't necessarily like about some things we're doing. But yeah, it's the only way.
Yeah. And, I'll say sometimes I probably share a little more than other people would think is appropriate. In fact, like I probably, and I don't say anything bad, but, everyone has these different thresholds. Mm-hmm. And I think all you can really do is trust your own feelings about what you share with people, including your children. and how they react to it, gauge these things, that type of thing. So, I guess there's different, like I said before, there's different sort of tolerance levels to what transparency can be held. Like if you're constantly telling your kids how you're feeling and they're getting very hurt and upset by it all, and it's just constant a cycle, you really need to look at yourself and wonder, why am I doing this? What you're probably doing is seeking comfort from your child, because you feel very hurt and sad. And that's okay. Like, be gentle with yourself, because you're just seeking love, right? You're trying to feel comfort. So, but that's not the place to get it. Not in that way. And, so being vulnerable and transparent, while also recognizing that you can go too far with that, and because you're needing them to heal you, and it's really not their it's not really their role, as children to sort of heal our wounds as the parents. And the other thing too is, if we're very negative about our expression with our children, and look how shitty my life is, look at all this crap and blah blah blah, the child can often feel like the mom or dad is unhappy with me, right? It can kind of feel like they're unhappy with the whole life, and I'm a big part of their life, and it can feel bad for them. But then also, like, it can form a negatively oriented mindset in the child, and the child will model that, will start to see the world in that negative lens that you've shown them. The world is terrible. Look at how terrible everything is. Yeah.
Well, and it just shows us that the inner work that we do benefits us and our children so much. So the more balanced and hopeful we are, then our children model that as well. Yeah. So I just think this whole thing about being transparent is, there's a lot of nuances to it. There's a lot of sort of feeling into what really feels guided and aligned for you, and how it's landing for other people. So it's a really nuanced topic.
Yeah. I just had
so important.
A good insight, I think, on how to judge for yourself whether it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. If you're sharing because it feels really good for them to know about whatever it is, you're sharing because it feels like it's really important for their growth and development to be aware of this occurrence within you, whatever it is.
Yes.
But if you need to share because I just need to share it with someone, I need it, I need to share this, then probably it's really a good idea to review that and consider, like, why am I picking my child for this, or am I picking the right person for this?
Yes.
And sometimes we don't really have the right people.
Not using them as a confidant in any way, but just serving their highest and best.
And it's hard because we can feel so close to our kids and so safe with them that they love us no matter what, right? So we can feel like very safe to just say whatever we want. But we need to notice that.
It'd be great to do a whole stream on just parenting and some of these.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And parenting's hard. Like, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I've got 4 children, one's an adult.
We're all figuring it out.
I have no idea what's going on.
All right, so this is probably a good time to end. And just so much love to everybody on your transparent adventure. And we'd love to hear how you're handling it all.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for watching. Appreciate all your faces. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. And, on Patreon, we just did the Namaste Method course, and I thought it was amazing. And we're going to put it up for sale. But we're also going to be posting the video for patrons at the $15 tier, the replay. So it'll actually be for sale, probably for more than that. But if you become a patron for $15,
yeah,
you'd be able to get that course, which I think is worth, I would probably price it more around $300 to $500, that course, honestly.
Yeah.
Most likely. But either way, what we try to do is, we do need to make some money, obviously, right? So what we try to do is set the bar as low as we can fathom. And, hopefully we can get to a place where we don't really have to set prices and maybe, we'll figure that out.
Free.
But, for now, that's something that you could consider doing. And basically that course, I'm pumped about it. I think it was really good. And I want everyone to get it. And so yeah, I would recommend checking that out if you're interested.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a link in the description below about the Patreon community. We'd love to have you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. So much love to I wanted to apologize to Angelic Sunflame. I just saw their comments, and we didn't get to them, but thank you. We're going to read through them. Really appreciate you coming, and thank you so much for all of your comments. Appreciate you very much. Take care.